Welcome to Mindful Drawing. I'm Robert, and I'll be your guide on this meditation practice that enters a space of mindfulness through the act of drawing. This week, we'll explore that liminal space between a thing imagined and a thing emerging. How do we connect something we might want to express on the page with what actually comes out? And this depends a little bit on our level of practice, skill, experience with drawing, or other mediums. But it can also be this space of opening. As we start a journey with something simple on the paper, our eyes begin to see, we begin to connect things together and form a space that can emerge as a resemblance to an imagination or an influence on our imagination, depending on how we open to it and what we allow ourselves to do as we work with that medium of drawing. I'm going to work with pen today, something light. I can just move it around, dance, play a little bit, go into a scene that is the water by a pier left to time. Those poles bringing a strange, abstract, regulating grid to the surface of the water. The light ripples near the edge of the shore, just bouncing off each pole. Everything tying together through that dynamic softness of the water, the regular placement and slow erosion of the poles to become a scene that many of us maybe have experienced in some way or another, to bring imagining out and see what we discover in our act of drawing. But you can use whatever medium you like: pencil, pen, marker, any kind of paper should work just fine. I have a little pad of Bristol here, a sketchbook, notebook paper, printer paper. The exercise is about the engagement through the medium, not so much the medium or the outcome that it supports. So go ahead and gather your supplies, establish your space, and let's draw together. Well, today I'd be a little inspired by the rivers around where I live. If you have some experience on river, lake, any water surface you might have seen an old pier or dock, something with a few bits and pieces of wood sticking up out of it, making that kind of regulated rhythm into the surface of the water, the evenly spaced piers going down, piles going down, and start with that as an image or an inspiration to see where it takes us. Each one of those, a little circle-ish thing from the top. So as we warm up a little for the exercise and get a sense of it, we'll look kind of at circles and a little deformation to them. A perfect circle, even in all directions, would be like looking at something from the top. And if we give it a little ellipse-ishness, we might be looking at it a bit from the side or an angle. As you draw a few circles in different orientations and different degrees of squished evenness, seeing what may bring to mind that standing at the edge of water and seeing things out within it. For me, that becomes a bit of a diagonal condition, so a little ellipse, a little elongation to the circle, give it directionality. But with any of these, we pull some edges down and repeat the curve at the bottom. We could imagine something standing, a little cylinder there. This one, geometric, kind of crisp. We can play in the warm-up a little of how that might change if we imagine poles of wood or something else sticking out from a surface. They might end up being a little less circular, a little more bumpy, just generally following around, and have some streaks of surface edges and splinters coming down, a rougher top or surface, and still reaching a nice smooth edge at the bottom, sitting there in some surface. I'd like them a little bit more round, maybe just a light wiggle to them, something that can have that tree ring effect. Maybe they're made out of metal or plastic or something else. Like getting a sense of drawing The circle to ellipse, the extension down towards the surface, and the closing with that surface, the general repeat of a curve. Feel a few more, just to move that hand around, forward and back, counterclockwise and clockwise, seeing which way works with the hand, works with whatever tool you're using. Pen here, pencil work fine. And if anything, this will just continue to draw lines and add layers of texture into something. And if we carry the inspiration of that set of piers, set of points sticking out from the water, we might come in if there's time and start to add a little bit of lapping to the surface, some rings, very light, to test if your tool can make circles without connecting all the lines, with the light crests and falls of little waves radiating as the water gently moves against the edges of things. For the exercise, you can have some of the 3D, just think of it in 2D from the top. Could be a little perspectival or kind of straight, whatever you start to see and whatever you follow with. I think I'll work a little in the slightly 3D realm and see where it goes. Opening up the fresh page, preparing to engage with it, some of warm up in the mind and in the hand, having made a few ellipses or slight circles. Take a moment to close the eyes for a bit to let the hands rest comfortably somewhere in the space of where you'll be drawing so they're familiar with the territory. And just bring to mind something there, a series of circular poles in a grid, loose or tight, engaging with a softer, more organic surface like water, grass, ground. Sitting with a little bit of that moment of just the relationship of viewer and scene. Some sounds may come to mind, smells, other senses, taking hints from the imagination or memory. A few breaths with that internal space or moment. And as you feel ready and open the eyes and find the instrument to draw with, you can always call back to that moment for inspiration, but we don't need to necessarily recreate it. Sometimes too much direction can become its own challenge, so follow the simple elongated circles or roundish things and see where they go. Finding somewhere, maybe a bit upper left, to work down to the right across the page, or upper right if you're left-handed, so you don't have to worry about drawing across stuff too much. Finding a nice place and bringing that first general circle-ish or ellipsis shape into play somewhere now, starting direction if it has an elongation, starting the potential spacing, giving a sense of size, and then moving over a little bit left or right, whatever that may be in your orientation, taking note of it, maybe moving the pen or pencil along it just to have a sense of that feel to keep things kind of lined up, and engaging another similar but new and unique circular expression. 2 points now marked on the paper, one in space, out space. If there's room to move again, about the same distance left or right, you can move another, or if you run out of space, you can move back or forward, starting to form a grid of roughly even roundish shapes, giving mine a little bit of a crinkly or wobbly edge. It's to have that weathered feel to the wood. Now we'll start to move out across the page, from me to the lower right, and each layer extend to the left and right, the grid, keeping a somewhat even spacing, using the hand motion to feel the rough X and Y whenever we move to a new spot. Becoming part of that construction on the page, part of the action and the motion. Find the location and move around, describing that kind of round shape. Find that location from two directions, beginning of a grid, and find that roundish shape. We'll work for this for a while, but depending on the size of your circles and the size of your page, extend whichever direction you need for space. I'm going to keep working through it, always keeping in mind, keeping in presence, that connection left and right, forward and back, looking for the spacing, engaging the paper. You start to bring both the body and action of the arm, as well as the body and action of the breath, to connection with the page. Finding space to breathe in and out while you locate the general position, the next shape. Letting that space between action guide you to the next creation and demarcation on the page. Letting the eye keep the spacing somewhat even. Letting the breath open up the in-between to see the space, to engage the system forming, that grid element, bringing regularity to the open field of the page. Give a few of the marks their own engagement with the breath on your next location as you find it there in space before engaging the paper. Breathe in deeply and begin the mark with an exhalation. And try to follow the exhalation around as you form that new shape. Do a few of those so we have a little space left wherever you need to find it. Breathing in, finding the place, and exhaling, slow and steady as you make the next mark on the paper. Breathing in a nice, relaxed rate between to relocate in that grid where to begin. Breathing in and then exhaling the creation of that next space, wrapped by ink, wrapped by graphite. A few deeper breaths with the marking out of the territory, a few recovery and even breaths between. The breathing in deep, as much an exercise as the breathing heavy while we move. And if you have space, you can do a few more. As the page is probably filling up and getting dense, you can start to engage into these circles. Now the sounds of the environment perhaps coming back, finding one, working, choosing a direction. Perhaps if we worked left to right corner, work right to left corner, just to give the page a nice motion across some balance over time. And finding the edges, the outer tangent of one shape, and beginning to bring it down with light, maybe a bit feathery strokes. Soften up that top edge a little bit, work their way towards the bottom, and very lightly bringing a close to it with that same rough curvature. The bottom edge reaching up from the surface of the water, the top edge reaching down, a texture to that pole emerging in space. You might add a little texturing to the top, maybe a rough edge, maybe rings. There's something to set it off in space, which we can come to and add at any time as we work along. Now moving left or right, forward or back to the next, and repeating the action with the new shape, bringing down the outer tangents and edges, working your way around the top edge, light feathery strokes crinkling down the side, finding roughly the same distance as before, and completing the bottom edge to bring it up. With light, worn posts, heavy texture on their sides, the flexible lignin slowly removed over time, the cellulose left to resist the water, and the light edging to it, kind of soften it all and give it a distinction between top and side. And as you do, you may find your own engagement, perhaps more clean cylinders, perhaps a little wiggle, a bark, or roughened texture. You can play as you work and always bring it back through to other things to find how you engage with the paper. But the basic cylinder shape on top, extending down about the same amount each time, forming a mirrored edge, repeated edge, and engaging both the open top surface and the closing bottom surface, starting to form some resemblance of three-dimensional irregularity there. The first few standing out a little on their own, but slowly the more that general alignment followed a bit by our eyes, bring them together in a space. Our focus just on each one, its own moment. Shapes already present, extension of their edges down towards some shared ending or termination. Lightly bringing that ending back up, connecting the two zones, letting our attention come to what we're drawing and how we're drawing it, feeling out the pen or pencil, how soft or heavy does it want to engage with the paper. Each instrument has its own weight or communication back to us. listening to it a little, using that as a suggestion for how you enter the action. This pen offers a nice, light touch. The pencil may offer a silkier, smooth engagement with the page. The heavy ink might run fast and encourage the hand to move a little quicker. Use a few rounds of this drawing to be in that space of awareness and presence as we repeat the general action in new context. You can open up and listen to the environment around the supporting instrument and take a few minutes to continue to develop this technique to draw in a space of quiet and listen to how your hand engages the instrument and the paper to form this growing grid of light cylinders. Ellipses and little cylinders you have potentially laid out. You may have very few left, perhaps a whole bunch that could have potential drawing interaction. And you can keep working with these, extending them to that generally connected base, starting through the many to see a bit of a plane of interaction, that surface of something emerging on the page, completed by our eye and imagination. Really just some strokes, some two-dimensional shapes, some lines, slowly giving us the impression of space, perhaps. You might see in that surface the potential texture or interaction between the elements, the light rings of soft waves slapping against the pieces. Maybe it's in the grass, not on the water, and you see little flowers or something growing around the vase, or the imagination starts to bring and move from leading the cylinders to connecting them through that open plane. They all share an edge. And it will bring the slight ripples into it, finding again one to begin with, and drawing some rings that work their way out, sneak behind, generally make a bumpy circle, the surface not perfectly smooth, rippling from the wind, rippling from the neighbor, little disruptions to the surface to extend the ellipse out in this case. To expand the influence of one shape towards the others. To bring definition to a plane or a surface. Or might perhaps seeing and imagining the materiality there. Slowly the drawing working its way into our imagination as much as the initial imagining or memory set out the direction. The dialogue slowly forming in our mind. Enjoying a little bit of play here lightly with the pen or pencil, following loosely the shape, following loosely directionality, by letting something organic and dynamic like the water open us up to have a little fun, just moving that pen or pencil, engaging the whole arm, extending shape out, loosely wobbling, not needing to complete any specific form, but building up the many suggestions into a resemblance, a bit of a recognition. Seeing if that starts to guide the eye to connect across the spaces, the ripples of the light breeze slowly fading out into the whole. The surface maybe taking on its own quality and direction between things. You have a few minutes left. You want to, for a couple of minutes, just draw with it, see where it goes. Move that pen or pencil around. And let the scene keep unfolding. As we approach the end of the formal time of the exercise, take stock of where you are, take stock of how you're feeling. If you're moving nice and enjoying it, you have the time, feel free. Keep drawing, keep playing and engaging, keep the world expanding out, those surfaces and points regulating our perception of a larger space or zone. But if the time has come and it's near the ending, finished or unfinished, notice that, take the pause, close the pen and set down the pencil. Take a moment to breathe into that finishing, not of all the parts and all the lines necessarily, but of the time now, the engagement. A good couple of breaths to fill out, expand, even out from the time interacting with the page. Maybe a light closing of the eyes just to calm into that breathing space, just like the sounds of the waves of the water or the outside lapping against the edge. And when you're ready, opening up, coming back, preparing to take it with you to the rest of the day. Sometimes we go into the drawing thinking one thing, imagining something, and we follow that imagination. We begin to see it. It starts to emerge, and then we keep playing, we keep exploring. We work hard in one place. We dig deep somewhere. We go far down a path. And as we step back, we take a moment, we breathe, close our eyes. We return to that space on the paper. We might see something entirely different. And after the exercise, where I felt the light waves, I see the little poles of wood emerging. I look at it now and I see a field of stubble. The hairs shaved next to the skin, little pores and surfaces, too evenly spaced, perhaps, for that organic nature of our body and hair follicles, but still, nonetheless, a bit emergent for me there. But maybe a little more time spent bringing a little reflection, a little shadow, a little tone, can drift it back towards the water. And each of these exercises is just the start of an idea, just letting our mind open up a little bit, begin to create on the paper, letting our eyes see a little bit and begin to suggest to that creation, finding the medium between imagination and expression. And wherever your drawing ends up, wherever it's going or taking you on that journey, hope you can keep moving with it on that journey. Follow it, lean into it, see what you can tease out there, and maybe create something unexpected, new, inspiring for your next adventure. If you enjoyed the exercise, please give it a thumbs up below, let your friends know, and share in the comments what you found at the end that you thought you would have in the beginning. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more content. Usually each week on Wednesday mornings, another episode will come out, another dive into some practice of a light technique, a meditation on our space and presence here on the page, and finding expression of a loosely organized topic. But whatever that subject becomes for you, whatever field emerges on the paper, I hope the feeling of the action, the meditation in that space of mindfulness, in the space of expression through the act of drawing, can carry with you for the rest of your day or evening. Whatever you do, draw well. Thank you.